3 minutes. That's all it took for whispers to ripple through palace corridors and ignite a firestorm that threatened to engulf the British monarchy. A scandal, explosive and deeply personal, was about to expose secrets no royal had dared confront. But before the headlines could detonate across the globe, King Charles made an unprecedented decision, one that shattered centuries of protocol to protect Catherine's family at all costs. It began as a murmur, quiet, insidious, and almost imperceptible. A single leak surfaced in the shadowy corners of the media world, cloaked in ambiguity yet laden with implication. At first, it seemed like just another rumor, the kind that flutters briefly before fading into obscurity. But this one refused to disappear. Instead, it spread with chilling precision, hinting at allegations tied to Catherine's family, allegations so damaging that their mere suggestion sent tremors through the foundations of the crown. Within hours, the machinery of the press roared to life. Tabloids sharpened their headlines, editors raced against time, and anonymous sources whispered promises of sensational revelations. The world's appetite for royal intrigue was insatiable, and the story poised to break carried the promise of scandal on a global scale. Phones buzzed relentlessly. Confidential memos circulated behind closed doors. The countdown to exposure had begun, and the monarchy stood perilously close to the brink. Behind the imposing walls of Buckingham Palace, panic spread like wildfire. Advisors gathered in urgent clusters, their voices hushed but their expressions grave. Centuries-old traditions dictated silence and restraint, yet the magnitude of the crisis demanded swift and calculated action. Every detail was scrutinized, every consequence weighed. The looming question hung heavily in the air. Should the crown intervene, or remain bound by protocol as the storm gathered strength? At the heart of the unfolding turmoil stood Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Known for her grace and composure, she now faced an emotional trial unlike any she had endured before. Torn between her unwavering commitment to royal duty and her fierce loyalty to her family, she found herself trapped in a painful dilemma. The woman admired by millions was suddenly vulnerable, her private world threatened by the merciless glare of public scrutiny. For Catherine, the stakes were not merely reputational, they were deeply personal. The monarchy, already navigating the complexities of a modern world, confronted the specter of another scandal, capable of eroding public trust. Memories of past controversies lingered like ghosts, reminding courtiers of how swiftly admiration could turn into disillusionment. The crown's stability depended on perception, and perception was now under siege. A single misstep could ignite a crisis that would echo for generations. It was in the stillness of a late-night briefing that King Charles was finally presented with the full gravity of the situation. The room was heavy with tension as intelligence reports were laid before him, each detail more alarming than the last. Senior courtiers issued stark warnings. Intervention could trigger constitutional controversy and invite fierce criticism. Protocol, they insisted, was the crown's shield, unyielding and absolute. But as the weight of the revelations settled upon him, Charles understood the cost of inaction. To remain silent would risk devastating both the monarchy and the Princess of Wales, whose dignity and devotion had strengthened the royal family's bond with the public. This was not merely a crisis of reputation. It was a test of loyalty, compassion, and leadership. And in that moment of reckoning, the king realized that tradition alone could not safeguard the future. As dawn breaks over Buckingham Palace, a monarch steeped in tradition prepares to make a decision that could alter royal history forever. Beyond the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, where silence is as sacred as tradition, an emergency meeting unfolds under the cover of darkness. Curtains are drawn, voices hushed, and loyalties tested. The royal machine, famed for its composure, begins to tremble as advisors confront a scandal too dangerous to ignore. What unfolds within those walls is not merely damage control, it is a battle for the monarchy's survival. The summons had been issued in secrecy, its urgency unmistakable. One by one, the king's closest advisors gathered, their expressions etched with concern and their minds sharpened by the gravity of the unfolding crisis. Legal experts, constitutional scholars, and senior courtiers assembled in solemn unity, bound by duty yet divided by fear. This was not a routine consultation. It was an emergency council, convened in the shadow of a threat that could destabilize not only a family, but an institution centuries in the making. At the center of the table lay a collection of confidential documents sealed, classified, and damning in implication. Each page carried the weight of potential devastation, outlining allegations tied to Catherine's family that threatened to erupt into a public spectacle. The words were precise, cold, and merciless, offering no room for misinterpretation. If exposed, they could ignite a scandal powerful enough to shake public confidence in the crown. As the details were examined in tense silence, a sobering truth emerged. The monarchy stood on the precipice of a modern reckoning. Debate soon followed, measured yet fraught with urgency. Senior courtiers, guardians of tradition, argued that the crown must distance itself from Catherine's family to preserve its neutrality. Their voices echoed the rigid doctrines of royal protocol, forged through centuries of survival. To intervene, they warned, would blur the line between duty and favoritism, risking constitutional controversy. Yet others countered with quiet defiance, insisting that compassion and loyalty must not be sacrificed at the altar of tradition. The room became a battlefield of principle, where heritage clashed with humanity. Hovering over the proceedings was the ghost of history. Past royal controversies lingered like cautionary tales, reminders of how swiftly public adoration could turn to condemnation. Memories of scandal, heartbreak, and media frenzy weighed heavily on every word spoken. The crown had endured such storms before, but each had left scars. The advisors knew all too well that another crisis could reopen wounds the monarchy had fought tirelessly to heal. Then came the intelligence that shifted the atmosphere from concern to alarm. Quietly delivered and impossible to ignore, it suggested the leak was no accident. Instead, it bore the hallmarks of orchestration, a calculated attempt to embarrass and destabilize the monarchy. The revelation sent a chill through the room. This was no mere gossip. It was strategy. A targeted assault designed to exploit vulnerability and provoke public outrage. Suddenly, the stakes were not only personal, they were political. As the council wrestled with its implications, Catherine was quietly summoned. The message was discreet, yet its urgency was unmistakable. She arrived not as a princess adorned in public admiration, but as a daughter burdened by fear. The emotional weight of the crisis pressed heavily upon her, forcing her to confront a painful conflict between royal duty and familial loyalty. Her composure remained intact, but beneath it stirred a storm of anguish and resolve. She understood what was at risk, not only her family's reputation, but the stability of the crown she had sworn to serve. King Charles listened in solemn contemplation, absorbing every argument, every warning, every whispered truth. The magnitude of the crisis was undeniable, and with it came an impossible choice. To remain bound by tradition would safeguard protocol but abandon those he held dear. To intervene would defy precedent and invite scrutiny. Yet as the night deepened, a realization began to take hold. Leadership, he understood, demanded courage as much as restraint. And so, as silence settled over the chamber, the king began to contemplate an extraordinary course of action, one that would challenge centuries of royal convention and redefine the very meaning of duty. As the tension reaches a breaking point, Charles prepares to confront Catherine face to face in a moment that will redefine their bond. For the Princess of Wales, composure has always been her armor. But behind her poised smile lies a woman now forced to confront the greatest test of her life. As the scandal tightens its grip, Catherine faces a harrowing dilemma: protect the crown she serves or defend the family she loves. In a world where loyalty is measured in sacrifice, her next move could define her legacy and fracture her heart. The truth reached her not through headlines, but in hushed words and guarded revelations. What had begun as a whisper was now an undeniable threat. Catherine learned the full scope of the allegations targeting her family, each detail cutting deeper than the last. They were not mere rumors. They were accusations poised to explode into public scrutiny, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed balance between her private past and her royal present. With every revelation, the weight of expectation pressed more heavily upon her shoulders. As the gravity of the crisis unfolded, memories stirred echoes of a painful history etched into the soul of the monarchy. Catherine could not escape the shadow of Princess Diana, whose life had been both illuminated and consumed by relentless media attention. The parallels were impossible to ignore. She remembered the cautionary tales whispered behind palace walls. Stories of a woman adored by millions yet tormented by scrutiny. Now, Catherine felt the chilling proximity of that same storm, and the realization unsettled her with quiet intensity. The crown had endured such tragedies before. She feared becoming its next chapter. The possibility of standing at the epicenter of a royal controversy filled her with dread, not for herself alone, but for those she loved most. Her family, ordinary before destiny intervened, now stood vulnerable beneath the unforgiving glare of public judgment. She feared that their names, once spoken with warmth and familiarity, would be dragged through speculation and scandal. And yet, silence demanded its own sacrifice. Every choice carried consequences, and none offered escape. The emotional strain began to seep into every corner of her life. Her public duties, once performed with effortless grace, became heavy with unspoken turmoil. Each appearance required unwavering composure, each smile a testament to her resilience. Behind that serenity lay a heart burdened by fear, loyalty, and the suffocating pressure of expectation. Catherine understood that the monarchy thrived on stability, yet her own stability was now being tested in ways she had never imagined. Torn between personal devotion and royal responsibility, she wrestled with an impossible question. Could she protect her family without jeopardizing the crown? The dilemma was as ancient as the monarchy itself: duty versus love, tradition versus humanity. But for Catherine, it was not an abstract principle. It was a deeply personal reckoning, one that demanded courage not only as a princess, but as a daughter and sister. Through the darkness, one constant remained. Prince William stood firmly by her side, unwavering and resolute. His support was not merely that of a future king, but of a devoted husband determined to shield the woman he loved. Together, they confronted the uncertainty, drawing strength from their unity. In his presence, Catherine found solace and reassurance, a reminder that she did not face the storm alone. Yet the scandal threatened more than individual reputations. It cast a looming shadow over the monarchy itself, risking public trust in an institution already navigating the complexities of a modern world. If mishandled, the crisis could fracture the delicate bond between crown and country. Catherine understood this with piercing clarity, and it deepened the urgency of her choices. Her private meeting with King Charles became the emotional fulcrum of the unfolding drama. In that moment of candor, vulnerability replaced protocol, and truth eclipsed formality. She spoke not as a princess, but as a woman pleading for understanding, her dignity unwavering even in distress. The king listened, moved by her sincerity and the quiet strength that defined her. And as her words lingered in the air, something shifted within him, an awakening of compassion that transcended tradition. Moved by her vulnerability and strength, the king reaches a decision that will challenge centuries of royal tradition. In a monarchy governed by centuries-old rules, defiance is rare and revolution almost unthinkable. Yet as the scandal threatens to spiral beyond control, King Charles makes a choice that shocks even his most loyal advisors. Breaking protocol in a move steeped in both compassion and controversy, he steps beyond the constraints of tradition. In that moment, the crown becomes not just a symbol of power, but a shield of protection. The weight of Catherine's plea lingered long after their private audience ended, echoing through the corridors of duty and conscience. King Charles, a sovereign shaped by history yet tempered by humanity, found himself standing at a crossroads where tradition clashed with compassion. The monarchy had always prided itself on neutrality, an unyielding principle that safeguarded its legitimacy. But now neutrality demanded silence in the face of injustice. And silence, he realized, would cost more than controversy, it would cost integrity. With unwavering resolve, the king made his decision. He would personally intervene to protect Catherine's family. It was a choice born not of impulse, but of conviction. For Charles, this was more than a matter of public relations. It was a test of loyalty and moral courage. He understood the risks. To act would challenge centuries of royal protocol, inviting scrutiny from critics and traditionalists alike. Yet to remain passive would betray both his family and the evolving spirit of the crown. The announcement, delivered behind closed doors, sent shockwaves through the palace. Advisors exchanged uneasy glances, their composure shaken by the gravity of the moment. The doctrine of royal neutrality, long regarded as inviolable, had been breached. Some warned of constitutional repercussions, cautioning that such involvement could provoke accusations of favoritism and undermine public trust. Others feared the wrath of the press, whose relentless appetite for scandal could transform intervention into controversy. The warnings were clear and relentless. Still, the king remained unmoved. He spoke with quiet authority, reminding his council that the monarchy was not merely an institution of tradition, but a living symbol of unity. Loyalty, he insisted, was not weakness. Compassion was not compromise. In choosing to protect Catherine's family, he was safeguarding not only their dignity, but the very humanity that allowed the crown to endure in a changing world. Tradition, he declared, must evolve or risk becoming irrelevant. With that, he authorized strategic measures to contain the scandal's impact. Legal advisors were instructed to challenge defamatory claims. Communications teams began crafting statements designed to stabilize public perception without inflaming the crisis. Discreet channels were activated to counter misinformation before it could spiral beyond control. Each move was calculated, precise, and unprecedented, a silent war waged not with swords, but with influence, strategy, and resolve. Within the palace, preparations unfolded with measured urgency. Officials worked tirelessly to construct a response that balanced transparency with discretion. Every word was weighed, every implication considered. The goal was not merely to suppress scandal, but to preserve dignity both for Catherine's family and for the institution itself. It was a delicate dance between tradition and transformation, orchestrated under the king's direct command. The significance of his decision did not go unnoticed. Insiders whispered that the monarchy was witnessing a defining moment in evolution shaped by empathy, rather than rigidity. To some, it was a daring gamble. To others, it was an act of quiet heroism. Either way, it marked a turning point in Charles's reign, signaling a modern vision of leadership grounded in both courage and compassion. In breaking protocol, he had not weakened the crown, he had redefined it. Yet power, once exercised, rarely remains concealed. Rumors began to surface. Murmurs carried beyond palace walls and into the restless world beyond. What had been decided in secrecy now trembled on the brink of exposure. And as word of the king's intervention begins to leak, the media prepares to strike back with relentless intensity. When the press catches the scent of scandal, retreat is not an option, it's a declaration of war. As rumors swirl and headlines loom, the British media sharpens its knives, determined to uncover every hidden truth. Yet this time, the monarchy fights back. With precision, strategy, and royal authority, King Charles challenges the narrative, igniting a dramatic clash between ancient power and modern journalism. The first tremor began as a whisper in editorial rooms, a subtle shift in tone that signaled opportunity. Tabloids, ever alert to vulnerability within the royal household, sensed blood in the water. Editors raced against the clock, reporters pursued elusive sources, and speculation spread like wildfire. The mere suggestion of scandal proved irresistible. Each rumor was magnified, each implication sharpened, transforming uncertainty into a spectacle. The press had found its prey, and it would not relent. Within hours, the pursuit intensified. Headlines teetered on the brink of publication, bold and unflinching, promising revelations that could captivate and condemn in equal measure. Every outlet clamored for dominance, desperate to break the story that would dominate global discourse. The monarchy, long accustomed to scrutiny, now faced an onslaught charged with unprecedented urgency. But this time, the palace was not retreating into silence. It was preparing to strike. Royal aides mobilized with calculated precision, their strategy unfolding in secrecy yet driven by unyielding determination. Communications teams crafted carefully measured responses designed to neutralize speculation without inflaming it further. Words were chosen with surgical accuracy, statements calibrated to preserve dignity while deflecting accusation. It was a delicate balancing act protecting Catherine's family without exposing the crown to greater risk. Every move carried consequences, and there was no margin for error. Behind the scenes, legal teams moved swiftly, wielding the law as both shield and sword. Injunctions were prepared. Challenges were issued. Sensitive material was scrutinized and contested before it could reach the public domain. The message was clear. The monarchy would not stand idle while reputations were dismantled by rumor and sensationalism. For the first time in years, the crown confronted the press not with silence, but with resistance. As the conflict escalated, speculation erupted across global media platforms and social networks. Commentators dissected every development with relentless intensity, while digital conversations spiraled into a frenzy of theories and accusations. In an age where information traveled faster than truth, the story became larger than the scandal itself. The world watched, transfixed by a drama that blurred the line between fact and intrigue, power and vulnerability. Public reaction was swift and deeply divided. Supporters hailed King Charles as a compassionate protector, a monarch willing to defend his family against unjust scrutiny. To them, his actions signaled courage and moral clarity. Critics, however, condemned his intervention as interference, accusing him of undermining the principle of royal neutrality. The debate ignited fierce discussion, fueling an atmosphere of controversy that threatened to eclipse the original allegations. Inside the palace, unease simmered beneath the surface. Insiders feared the confrontation could spiral into a public relations catastrophe, one capable of damaging the monarchy's credibility for years to come. Each headline carried the potential to inflame tensions, each broadcast to sway public perception. The stakes were monumental, and the margin for miscalculation perilously thin. The clash exposed a fragile equilibrium, one that had long defined the relationship between the crown and the press. Freedom of expression stood on one side, the preservation of dignity and stability on the other. It was a delicate balance, forged through decades of mutual dependence and quiet hostility. Now, that balance teetered on the edge of collapse. As curiosity surged to a fever pitch, the world leaned closer, hungry for answers and captivated by the unfolding drama. And as the battle with the media intensifies, the monarchy braces for a storm of public reaction that could shape its future. Across Britain and beyond, the world watches in stunned fascination. Was King Charles a compassionate father figure protecting his family, or a monarch overstepping his authority? From crowded newsrooms to quiet living rooms, opinions ignite in passionate debate. As the scandal grips the public imagination, the royal family faces a reckoning that threatens not only their reputation, but the very relevance of the crown in a modern age. The nation finds itself divided, gripped by a storm of speculation that refuses to subside. In cafes, on commuter trains, and across dinner tables, the same question echoes with relentless urgency. Did the king act out of duty or defiance? Public opinion fractures into opposing camps, each convinced of its righteousness. To some, Charles stands as a protector guided by compassion and moral courage. To others, he is a sovereign who has ventured dangerously beyond the boundaries of royal neutrality. In this unfolding drama, perception becomes power, and every voice adds fuel to the fire. The digital world erupts with unparalleled intensity. Social media platforms transform into arenas of heated debate, where theories multiply and narratives collide. Hashtags surge, opinions harden, and whispers morph into declarations of certainty. Admirers defend the king's intervention with fervor, praising his humanity in an institution often criticized for its emotional distance. Meanwhile, skeptics question his motives, suggesting that tradition has been compromised in favor of personal allegiance. The truth becomes obscured beneath a whirlwind of speculation, leaving the world suspended between loyalty and doubt. Royal commentators and constitutional experts enter the discourse with meticulous scrutiny, dissecting every nuance of the king's decision. Their analyses dominate broadcasts and headlines, probing the delicate balance between duty and discretion. Could such intervention set a precedent that reshapes the monarchy's role in modern Britain? Or does it signal a necessary evolution, one that reflects empathy rather than indifference? These questions linger in the public consciousness, amplifying both intrigue and uncertainty. The stakes, it seems, extend far beyond a single scandal. For many, Charles emerges as a symbol of modern leadership. Supporters hail him as a compassionate monarch willing to stand by his family in their hour of need, redefining the crown as an institution capable of warmth and humanity. They see courage where others see risk, strength where others see vulnerability. In their eyes, the king's decision is not an act of rebellion, but one of quiet heroism and assertion that loyalty and justice can coexist with tradition. Yet criticism grows just as fiercely. Detractors accuse him of compromising royal neutrality, warning that the crown's authority rests upon its distance from personal entanglements. To them, this unprecedented intervention threatens to blur the line between monarchy and emotion, opening the door to controversy and political debate. Their voices echo with concern, urging caution as the institution navigates treacherous waters. In their skepticism lies a fear that centuries of carefully preserved balance may be unraveling. Inside the palace, tensions intensify with every passing hour. Advisors clash behind closed doors, their strategies shaped by urgency and uncertainty. Some advocate transparency to restore trust, while others urge discretion to contain the crisis. The atmosphere grows increasingly strained, reflecting the magnitude of what is at stake. The monarchy stands at a crossroads, its future tethered to decisions made in secrecy and shadow. Amid the turmoil, Catherine emerges as a beacon of grace. Her quiet resilience captivates the public, transforming her into a symbol of dignity under pressure. Composed yet vulnerable, she embodies strength in adversity, earning admiration that transcends controversy. In her poise, many see the promise of a future queen capable of guiding the monarchy through an era of transformation. And as admiration and skepticism continue to collide, a profound uncertainty takes hold. The long-term stability of the crown hangs in the balance, poised between tradition and change, loyalty and legacy. Amid the turmoil, a hidden truth begins to surface, one that could redefine the narrative forever. Just when the scandal appears unstoppable, a shocking revelation emerges from the shadows. What if the story that threatened to destroy Catherine's family was never what it seemed? As secrets unravel and hidden motives come to light, the narrative takes a dramatic turn. Behind the headlines lies a truth far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone dared to imagine. In the midst of mounting chaos, whispers began to shift. The narrative that once seemed inevitable, an explosive scandal poised to shatter reputations, suddenly faltered under the weight of new information. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, fragments of truth surfaced, challenging the story that had gripped the world. What had appeared to be a devastating personal controversy now hinted at something far more sinister. The scandal was not merely an accident of circumstance. It bore the unmistakable marks of orchestration. Evidence began to surface through discrete channels, pointing toward powerful external interests operating beyond the public eye. These were not reckless rumors or careless mistakes, they were calculated maneuvers, strategically designed to provoke outrage and destabilize the monarchy. Anonymous insiders, bound by secrecy yet compelled by conscience, revealed that the leak had been carefully engineered. The timing, the language, the calculated release of information, each detail suggested deliberate intent. The objective was clear: tarnish Catherine's family, weaken public confidence, and expose the crown to unprecedented scrutiny. As investigators within the palace delved deeper, unsettling questions emerged. Who stood to benefit from such a scandal? Why had the allegations surfaced with such precision? And how had they spread so rapidly through the global media ecosystem? The deeper the inquiry went, the more it uncovered a labyrinth of hidden agendas lurking within influential circles. What initially appeared to be a personal controversy was now unfolding as a calculated assault, one designed to exploit vulnerability and fracture the monarchy's fragile equilibrium. Palace investigators worked tirelessly, scrutinizing every claim and tracing every lead. Their findings exposed glaring inconsistencies buried within the allegations. Statements failed to align. Sources contradicted one another. Crucial details unraveled under careful examination, revealing distortions crafted to mislead rather than inform. With each discovery, the scandal's credibility began to erode. The truth, once obscured by sensationalism, was slowly reclaiming its voice. Quietly and without fanfare, Catherine's family was vindicated. The accusations that once threatened their dignity dissolved under the light of scrutiny, exposing a narrative built on manipulation rather than fact. Though the palace refrained from public triumph, the shift in understanding was undeniable. What had once appeared as vulnerability was now revealed as resilience. Catherine, steadfast in grace and resolve, emerged not as a figure of controversy, but as a symbol of integrity under siege. As the truth gained momentum, King Charles's controversial intervention took on a new meaning. What critics had condemned as interference was now seen as foresight. His decision to break protocol was reframed as both strategic and visionary, a calculated act of leadership that shielded his family and preserved the dignity of the crown. In protecting Catherine's family, he had not defied tradition recklessly. He had safeguarded the monarchy from a hidden threat. Public perception began to shift with remarkable speed. Supporters who had once stood divided found renewed confidence in the royal family. Doubt gave way to admiration, and skepticism softened into respect. The narrative that once threatened to weaken the monarchy now fortified it, transforming adversity into affirmation. The crown, tested by intrigue and betrayal, emerged stronger and more unified than before. And as the storm receded, a profound realization took hold. This was more than the resolution of a scandal. It was a defining moment in modern royal history, a testament to resilience, loyalty, and the courage to confront unseen enemies. With the truth finally revealed, the stage is set for a resolution that will redefine the legacy of King Charles. As the dust settles and the storm fades into history, one question remains. Did King Charles change the monarchy forever? In a single daring act, he defied centuries of tradition to protect those he considered family. What began as a scandal became a defining moment, one that reshaped public perception and heralded a new era of compassion, courage, and modern leadership within the British crown. In the aftermath of turmoil, clarity emerged like dawn after a relentless night. The allegations that once threatened to tarnish Catherine's family dissolved under the weight of truth, restoring their dignity and reputation. What had once been whispered with suspicion was now spoken with vindication. The storm that sought to break them instead revealed their resilience. For Catherine, the ordeal was both a trial and a triumph, a crucible that tested her strength and affirmed her grace. Through adversity, she emerged unshaken, her composure transforming vulnerability into quiet power. At the heart of this transformation stood King Charles. His decision, once shrouded in controversy, now commanded respect. By placing humanity above rigid adherence to protocol, he demonstrated a leadership defined not by detachment, but by empathy. In choosing to protect Catherine's family, he redefined what it meant to wear the crown in a modern age. Tradition had long been the monarchy's foundation, but compassion became its guiding light. His bold intervention did not weaken the institution, it strengthened it, proving that courage could coexist with duty. As public understanding deepened, admiration grew. The monarchy, once perceived by some as distant and unyielding, appeared renewed, more relatable, more compassionate, and more attuned to the emotional realities of a changing world. This evolution signaled a shift not only in perception but in purpose. The crown had endured because it adapted, and in this defining moment, it did so once again. What had begun as a crisis became a catalyst for transformation. Support for Catherine and Prince William soared to unprecedented heights. Their unity, forged in adversity, resonated with a global audience. Together they embodied resilience, dignity, and unwavering devotion not only to one another, but to the future of the monarchy. Catherine's strength in the face of scrutiny endeared her to millions, cementing her status as a beloved future queen. She was no longer merely admired, she was trusted, seen as a symbol of grace capable of guiding the institution into a new era. Historians and royal commentators would later debate the long-term implications of the king's extraordinary decision. Some would describe it as a turning point, a moment when the monarchy embraced emotional intelligence without sacrificing authority. Others would regard it as a calculated risk that redefined royal leadership for generations to come. Yet all would agree on one truth. This was a defining chapter in the reign of King Charles, a moment when tradition bent to meet the demands of humanity. As time moved forward, the echoes of the scandal transformed into lessons etched into royal history. The crown emerged renewed, resilient, united, and prepared for the challenges of the future. What once threatened to fracture the monarchy instead fortified it, proving that adversity could inspire evolution rather than decline. In Catherine's quiet strength, in William's steadfast loyalty, and in Charles's courageous resolve, the monarchy found not only survival but renewal. And so, as this extraordinary chapter is etched into the annals of history, its legacy endures as a testament to courage, compassion, and conviction. As history records this remarkable moment, one truth remains undeniable. Even within the most ancient traditions, courage has the power to rewrite destiny.